All right, so when you're watching this video today, I want to invite you to listen for insight. Don't listen for agreement. Oftentimes we'll fixate our minds with a topic like this, and then we'll listen for what we agree with. And we'll discard things and we'll miss things because our mind is too busy talking while the other person's talking, while you're listening. So I want to invite you to really put down the internal voice for just the duration of the video and listen for insight. And then once it's over, pick out what you agree with, pick out what you don't agree with, and leave a comment below and share it, okay? Now, take a deep breath. I know this title right here triggers some of you, right? Take a deep breath, gather up whatever reason why, and release it. Breathe, relax, and enjoy the video.
I'm inspired, I'm inspired,
What up, y'all? So, it's bright out here. I just woke up, but I woke up to a lot of controversy in the comments. Even had my girl text me about the video I made yesterday, toxic masculinity, and the title of it is "Toxic Masculinity Doesn't Exist." And so, this title was made to trigger people, right? To bring up stuff. Obviously, there are things men do in the world that is not productive towards the world, right? There's a lot of crappy energy some men can put out there. And I think a lot of women have had very negative experiences with men. And so to hear a video, to hear someone say toxic masculinity doesn't exist is like blasphemy and triggering. And it's like, who the hell, what is this guy talking about? What's going on in his head? And so I want to expand upon this video really quickly today, just to highlight what my intention was in this video. First off, it was meant to trigger you, right? And if you felt triggered by that, message me, shoot me a message and let's talk about what you've went through in your experience. It was meant to bring up all that energy and highlight the conflict within once someone almost invalidated what your experience was, right? It was like, who the fuck is this guy, right? And so I did that on purpose, I totally acknowledge that there has been toxicity in the way men have behaved in the world. I acknowledge that and I get that. But the second thing I wanted to do in this video was I wanted to show the creative power of words, right? Words are powerful. And so my lady, she sent me a message and she felt triggered by this video. And she's like, I don't think I agree with this one, and she mentioned how the word toxic masculinity was a coined term by feminists to highlight misogyny, to highlight negativity. I mean, just to highlight the way men can be, right? And while the term does do that, it does highlight what is, I think it also creates it, because that's what our words do. Our words are creative. And so if you have a woman out there that's had a negative experience with a man, and she's like, that makes sense. He has toxic masculinity. That may not necessarily be the case. He might just be a hurt dude, and sometimes, hurt people. And if we label somebody toxic, oftentimes we're gonna wanna stay away from it rather than open up ourselves up to connect with that individual on a heart level and work with them. Toxicity means death, right? And while there are men's actions out there that can mean death, toxicity means if I'm in the presence of it, I can't breathe. My body starts shutting down. If you're in the presence of a toxic man, you'll be all right. Like, unless he doesn't, he puts his hands on you, then we got a problem, right? But if you're in the presence of a toxic man, the thing that makes him toxic is the idea that he's toxic. The thing that makes him unbearable, he's more so unbearable, not so much toxic. The judgment about these characteristics of the man will thus perpetuate more of that in your body, in your nervous system, in your experience, in your dynamic, in the relationship with the man. If there's an idea that this person is toxic in your head. By labeling someone toxic in the head, the brain reconfigures itself so that it justifies that label, and I totally understand, right? Because toxic is how it feels. There's somebody left a beautiful comment in that last video and said that the word toxic masculinity is really just a reflection of what the collective, what parts of the collective, how they feel about their experiences with men. But if we walk around, specifically, I think a lot of ladies latch on to the idea of toxic masculinity more than anything. If you've had 1 or 2, maybe even 3 bad experiences with men, and you label them all toxic, well, now you're going to be more likely to put on your glasses of toxic masculinity because you have these experiences, and now you're going to be walking around the world with these glasses on called toxic masculinity, and you'll be looking for it in other men unconsciously. And when these glasses are on, well, now you're living a new pattern. And every man, every relationship you try to get into, you're going to be wearing these glasses of toxic masculinity and seeing that in men who are just good men, right? Like, even in my relationship, I've had, she's had experiences with guys in the past, and those things have gotten into the nervous system. And, I'm a good dude. Like, I have my flaws, right? But those glasses from that previous relationship will get put on, and then you'll look for it in the current relationship you're in. And therefore recreating the experience of it, even though reality may not necessarily match what's really going on. So this word of toxic masculinity can be dangerous, because then you're going to have women picking this up and putting these glasses on and creating a pattern for themselves when it was never necessary. Does that make sense? That the relationship with that title can create a pattern in an experience, in your experience. And that's not good for the men, that's not good for the women. This idea of toxic masculinity creates more toxic masculinity. And therefore, now there's going to be this war of, this war on characteristics that may not necessarily align with love. It's almost like paradoxical. Like we become toxic to the toxicity, right? If someone has a hater and then they start hating their haters, and so what I was getting at in this video is not becoming attached to this label of toxic masculinity and looking at them as young boys inside that's jacked up. You heal the boy, you heal the man. And so if there's a little boy demonstrating the same characteristics as that man, you're not going to say that little boy has toxic masculinity. Well, the thing about these toxic men is they're just little boys that are, and their cells have changed over time. They've grown, their bodies have changed, but they're still walking around with that hurt little boy inside of them. I know this because I was one of them. I wasn't toxic, but I was, I was on the other end of the spectrum. I was a little too yielding, and so there's some men that come out on the other side too aggressive and too inconsiderate, maybe really arrogant. And they have a similar condition. You know, it's the same type deal going on. The little boy inside is jacked up. And so rather than labeling them toxic, just look at them for what they are. You know, I mean, it may feel toxic, but to call something one thing does not make it what that thing is. And so yesterday I said, well, let's look at it as more so imbalanced, because then I don't have this judgment about that person when I say, oh, they have a, you know, somewhat of an imbalance. I mean, it's still a label, but it's less aggressive and it's less judgmental, and it's less, it doesn't bind them to this category that nobody wants to be freaking called toxic, you know, and even that's what they may do, you know, but there's just a way of going about it. And in that video, I was just trying to highlight that maybe this isn't the best word to be using. Maybe this title isn't the best thing to attach to men who are jacked up inside, you know, because what productive thing is that going to do for those men? And what productive thing is that going to do for the women that feel that way about specific men in their lives? It's not going to do anything productive for anybody. You know, there has to be a relabeling of what we're seeing here, and that's all I was saying. You know, so I acknowledge what you've been through, whoever you are watching this video right now, and you've had a toxic experience. But I also just want to urge you to be conscious of your words, because they're creative, and if you're walking around with ideas of toxic masculinity in your head, you're going to continue to create that for you and your experience. Our thoughts are very powerful. If we continue to point our words at people and say, that's a toxic man, well, you just sent a spell out onto that man, and now you're binding these words onto that man. It's not toxic, he's hurting. And maybe you're not the person to help him stop hurting, but don't be the person to add to it by calling him toxic. It may be an accurate description for you, but it's more damaging than it is healing. That's all I'm saying. So leave your ideas in the comments below. In this video, I don't want to invalidate your experience. You've had your experience, but I would like for everyone to come together and have a conversation in the comments below and talk about this subject in a way that, you know, you share your experiences, you get your experiences out, and maybe somebody has a similar experience. Y'all can link up and talk about it, you know, and figure something out. Figure out a way to come back to peace, so that you don't look at these men in the world as toxic, right? And then ruin your relationship with the masculine energy and make the masculine energy resentful towards you for calling them toxic, right? Maybe there's a way we can come to a middle, healthy place where we can just acknowledge that everybody's freaking hurting. Life is hard sometimes, right? Earth can be rough, society can be rough. Maybe we can all acknowledge that we're all freaking hurting, and we can just do something about the hurt. So let's see what you think in the comments below. Much love to you. If you have experiences with all this stuff, hit me up. Go to my website, www.gordonxavier.com. Book a free phone call with me. I'd love to talk to you about your experiences and maybe help you find healing, find peace with your experiences with maybe a guy that was in your life that was not healthy, a bad relationship. Maybe there has been toxic-like things in your life, and you want to get that poison, that pain, that hatred, that judgment, that shame, that guilt, that resentment out of your nervous system. Hit me up, and we can talk about it. Much love.